Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. We are going to discover together something about how code can be a creative tool, a creative expression. I'm Ipek. I'm a product designer and creative coder. I'm from Istanbul, but for the past 2 years, I've been living in Naples, in Italy. And actually, my journey with the products and design started with architecture. I had my background there. I worked a little bit. I had some experience then. Eventually, how technology can shape the way we design and the way we create things led me to discover where I am now in the Apple Developer Academy, learning on app development, design, and business, how to build apps from concept to a product. So this interest went beyond, and today I'm gonna tell the story how it led me came here. So we are going to cover couple of topics together, starting with the motion design. This is where all the story began. Then we will have an overview about creative coding. What's creative coding? The tools, the communities around that, so we will be on the same page. Then creative coding in a practice, how it works when you actually want to build something. And how all of this exploration eventually come together and make me wanna build an app. So it's a journey, mix of concept, visuals. I hope you enjoy it. So let's start with the motion design. This is where all the story begins in my journey. For the ones who are not maybe familiar with the term, we can call it visual storytelling through the movement. You're bringing visuals into the life. And if you think about it, we are seeing this in pretty much everywhere in our life, actually. We can see in the brand animations, commercials, interactive visuals, right? For example, here is a beautiful work done by Studio Dumbar with a collaboration of OpenAI Studio to create their brand identity for their annual conference day, development day. And if you think about this creative expression, we sometimes see it in the apps too. Maybe not in the same way, we don't call it motion design, but the idea behind carries over. In the example of from Not Boring Software, maybe some of you heard, it's Not Boring Habits by Andy Allen. And if you think about it, it's a basic habit tracker app, right? But how the interface responds to your tap, to your touch, and how it goes from flat to alive. So the same attention on this creative approach and the expression still follows the same way. And this was my interest, so bringing motion, animation, and the creative expression into the branding of the projects that you can build, right, to make their idea stronger. For example, if we have an app called Haptic Wayfinding, OICA, which is designed for blind and visually impaired people, and to let them find their way with haptic wayfindings. So that the concept of haptic wayfinding to give that idea to the people and just make them stronger. So every opportunity, every app that you build, it lets you go further and explore more. And eventually, this interest led me discover and see this term called creative coding everywhere, because it's actually pretty related. So, creative coding. I want to start here with a question. You don't have to answer out loud. I just want you to think about it for a second. why do we write code? Thought about it, right? I agree with that also. So, like, as developers, we write code besides making money to solve real life problems, to make people's life easier, solve a bug, create a feature. So code serves a function. And that's totally okay. It's normal. This is what drives most of us to do all of this work, right, every day. But there is also a completely different approach to this code, where you can write code, but the purpose is not the functionality, but is the expression. So you can create something visual, something sonic, something that it moves, evolves on the screen, and it doesn't serve any purpose rather than your creative expression. So I pretty much explained that practice of using code with a creative intent called creative coding. And it's actually not even a new thing. It has some history behind. Since, if we think about it, early days of the computers, there are actually some people are asking, what does this machine can do besides some calculations? There is Gergnis. He's a German mathematician, graphic artist, computer engineer, all of them. And he was experimenting code with visual graphics out of computers and pushing the boundaries of what the computer can achieve aesthetically. And there is Vera Molnar. She's a visual artist and one of the most well-known pioneers of this concept. She was creating algorithmic arts and defining the rules as system and let the machine create variations of it, the randomness. And it's interesting, like her works are interesting because she is not, like her works are not she was not trained by programming. She was a visual artist, but she recognized that code, the competition, can be a creative partner for her work. And this field continues evolving by the programmers, the world around this creative expression, and it led processing born. Have you heard about it before? Okay. So processing came out from MIT Media Lab around early 2000s, and it's a set of tools written on Java language. And whole purpose was to make creative coding more approachable for the people who want to use code for a creative intent, for the creative purpose. And over the time, P5.js born, which is a very common framework also, and it took everything from processing and beyond, go further and put everything on the web. So now you can run everything that you're already running on your computer, but on the web. So this made sharing effortless, right? People start exploring their works, sharing, building on top of each other's works also. So a whole ecosystem grew, this ecosystem of creative coding. And what about Swift? Can SwiftUI be used as a tool for these creative expressions? The Swift developer community is well known for creative approach the developers have. We walked through with the not boring software, but in the topic of creative coding, Swift was not really mentioned, and it was still emerging. This is interesting. because I never thought of also using Swift and SwiftUI, even though that I started programming with that, and even though I was interested with creative coding, till I came across with this article, which was also mentioning from Create with Swift, which is a community that they write about development and design on Apple platforms. They have very nice resources if you would like to check some. And so I asked myself, creative coding with Swift, how this can happen. So I was in the right middle of exploring both of them. And eventually, I saw a gap there, and it let me build something at the end. But first, let's see together how the creative process of creative coding actually works, how it looks like. The core of this creative coding is layering. You start with simple, a shape, then you bring some sequence. It's one layer at a time. You are creating a composition. And this is very nice, actually, because in this concept, you cannot make mistake. Maybe the mistake that you do can lead you to discover something new, and that might be your goal also. In SwiftUI, creative coding built around these three views. Geometry Reader gives you the size of the canvas, and canvas is your page where you draw and build the things. And with the timeline view, it gives you the continuous updates over the time. We can explain more or less like that. And just with that, this is your starting point. You can already build something, because everything that you will put will be here. So we build and layer visually. You start with a shape, something simple, circle, let's say, let's choose a circle. And then you bring a sequence to that. You can arrange radially in a grid layout to start creating your composition. You can add color to have control over hue, saturation. That SwiftUI also supports that. You can blend with blend modes, so you see when how these will look like when those shapes are interacting and overlapping each other. And then you make it move. This is where we mentioned the timeline view. So it evolves over the time, and it updates continuously to the view. And this is where the creative coding gets interesting, because you apply noise. Noise is controlled randomness. It's an algorithm that gives you this smooth and random value from one to the next. So it distorts each shape that you put there. And I think if we see it like that, it's easy. It's easy to understand. You're just layering. You're just bringing values on to each element. You're creating a building blocks. So I ask myself, okay, there is not enough resource on creative coding, even though that it's very approachable. It's still emerging, yes, we know. And there's another fact that learning curve of creative tools is there. This is something that I'm always carrying from my architectural education, that whenever you want to create something, you're learning a new tool, and those creative learning tools is sometimes difficult. The amount of time that you spend on learning that you're not achieving fast, you can do this with code actually faster to iterate to see the result better, because the people who are like familiar with these creative tools, the layout is like a cockpit. I sometimes forget what I'm doing, what I have to create, where to find the solutions. So I took all these questions that they were like following me during this journey, and Swift Student Challenge was approaching. Maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not. It's Apple's annual competition for students. And it gave me a deadline to actually want to start building, because sometimes you might have all of these thoughts and you end up creating nothing. It's also a different frustration if I think about it. And that's how it made me want to build this app called Creo, which is a node-based creative coding app. It makes you create generative visuals by connecting nodes, and then you discover the Swift and SwiftUI code behind that. What I mean by that is you build your composition visually. You drag each node, so each piece of code, those layers onto the canvas, and your composition is starting appearing on the screen. Since each block represents a piece of code, you can play with the parameters that we will also discover later. And it's the same layers that we just walk you through: the shape, the structure, the motion, the noise, how you play with those each element. And yeah, you're playing, creating, and when you feel that, okay, I am happy with the idea. So behind every creation, what I was saying, there is the code run behind that idea. So SwiftUI generates on the screen, and if you later want to discover, it pushes you to go there. So I kept saying, what is node-based approach? It's building systems visually. So you connect where you connect the elements, and the data flows between them. There are some examples. For example, Touch Designer is one of the most well-known software in this world. People use it a lot for generative visuals, for interactive installations, and it's not as like, it's a visual building, it's not easy. This was the thing that I was mentioning about the learning curve of the creative tools, but you connect them with the lines. It has some mathematics behind. It's just the data flows between those little pieces of nodes, so you somehow build your composition visually. And there is also Scratch. Maybe you have familiar with that one. It's a block-based programming language. It makes you understand computational thinking by building visually. So it also, I think, shows something another important. You make your creations faster by connecting these each blocks, and each piece of block does something different, and it happens right away. So you see your creation. So you create, then you see, and you start also understanding. So there are two different tools, like Touch Designer and Scratch, but you build visually in both of them. And I want to this was what I wanted to bring into the app. So I will show one example closely to explain. We have our primitive block, which is our shape. Then you are bringing a sequence by a structure. A sequence node, greedily, readily, you can change it. You can add a color map, which gives this gradient look. You have control over the hue to discover that. And you bring motion, oscillate, evolve. You can also combine those motions to see. And then the nodes, which makes the creative coding more powerful. So now we see not just each shape, but the colors that we assign to them are evolving. So this is a little bit of the idea behind. But you're also playing around and enjoying with your creation process. You can go back, change the values. You can, for example, we mentioned blend. Now, since the layers are interacting with each other, they are overlapping, we can see how blend contributes on this composition. And you can, to see what will happen if you change the part of the structure, the grid, and change with the radial one, to play around with your composition. This is the part that you start with the creative intention, first creating, then the coding. And yeah, then if you're ready to explore, and if you want to build this on your app, if you want to make your, I don't know, the apps visually appealing, or if you just want to discover, this can be a tool for that intent. So when I look back, this exploration started with my curiosity of the motion design, creative coding tools, looking for developers and designers doing incredible work. And I started exploring this creative coding, and I ended up the tool that I needed to express myself. So I call this journey that code became my creative tool. And I think Swift and SwiftUI has so much to offer for this kind of creative expression. I think the missing thing is not the technology, but the community, the sharing process that I was mentioning with the other frameworks, P5.js, that we have just seen. So the culture of the people, how much, like, we bring more, and this creating just becomes effortless when we also share more. So if anything made you curious today, I hope you, I don't know, got inspired. Give it a try. Write some code that it doesn't serve a function. I think we are all doing every day. So maybe you might enjoy it also during this process more than you think just creating something visual, right? Because I think creative coding becomes richer, more diverse voices join the conversation. And Creo was just my way of inviting more people into that space within the Swift community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So, we have some questions for you. Have you explored creative coding in... I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I explored, and it's so surprising because when I started working on building, meanwhile, I also saw it in the metal. Yeah, I explored. It's a very nice tool. And I support that ideas very, very much.
Okay. Have you one Swift student joined?
No. um, Unfortunately, but I'm here sharing my journey, and I think I want also something else, but this...
What did you want then?
Oh, no, I didn't win.
Ah, okay.
No, I didn't win.
Okay, if you have any other questions, I'm sure you are going to be here
Yeah.
all the whole day.
Yeah, all the day I'm here.
And thank you again for your presentation. Please, one round of applause for Ipek.
Thank you.